Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I haven't looked at this in a while, but I wanted to show you this just to show you what the return rates have been we're still in 2021, even with a Bitcoin ETF, even with the free pass that it got, even with all of the supposed crypto journalists out there and CoinDesk, and that's all they talk about, the Bitcoin and Ethereum, da-da-da-da. With all of that, Bitcoin's up 442% to XRP's 349 with an SEC lawsuit. There is nothing on this list that I would rather own than XRP. And after I saw Brad Garlinghouse's video yesterday, I mean that even more. Okay? And I tweeted this out this morning. I just have this feeling after watching this. Some of the things, the way Brad Garlinghouse was carrying himself, and some of the things that he said in this, and I'll try to play a good bit of it for you. I just have this little feeling. It's a good feeling, by the way. This is with Charles Gasparino, by the way. Oh,
Two remote workers travel to meet their colleague.
I'm not going to make you sit through the ad. Here we go. Well, this will be done in just a few seconds. While we're waiting on that, actually, I'll just talk to you. So, a lot of times in the morning, I have to get up early and go deal with my son goes and does workouts early in the morning, and so I'm doing this video before I go get him. So, anyway, just killing time here. All right, 4 seconds left. Here we go. Come on.
Charlie? You've been here at this conference in the past. I just want to get your feeling. You've been bouncing around. Different vibe this year?
Different vibe to some degree, but, I think it's actually vibrant. There's a lot of, obviously, people here. It's one of the first conferences I've been to post-COVID, probably really the only one. And I think, it feels like the world is slowly returning to normal. They're being very disciplined about masks.
I know, we just got pulled over.
We did get pulled over.
Let's still go to your case, and I know that's kind of a very consuming thing. You guys are building out your business in Europe. I guess your focus here in the U.S. is this case that the SEC brought against you. Any updates on this?
Look, the good news for Ripple is since the SEC filed their lawsuit, we really haven't been able to operate in the U.S. because of this uncertainty that has existed and continues to exist. Outside the United States, we have continued to have an amazing year. Q3 is a record year on every metric. So we feel really good about the fact that we can continue to build the business outside the U.S. But on the other hand, I'm a U.S. guy. It's a U.S. company. Our headquarters are San Francisco. We have a big office in New York. And, I would like to see the SEC process move forward and get closure. I think the whole industry benefits from that clarity and certainty about how digital assets will be regulated, and that doesn't exist in the United States. And it does exist in other countries, frustratingly.
It does. You want it to be expedited. Does the SEC want it to be expedited?
Well, so far no. As you probably know, the SEC was in a hurry to file this case. It was filed a day before Jay Clayton, the then chairman, left office. And now, just recently, they've actually asked to extend the expert discovery process out into January, which, as you probably know, it's very unusual for the plaintiff to ask for a delay.
Oh, yeah.
Typically, the
it's
defendant,
the other way around.
We're the ones kind of pushing, because we think it's very clear that this is not a violation of the U.S. securities laws. XRP is not a security, and we think that ultimately that will be proven out in the court, so we want to get to the judge as quickly as possible.
I want to ask you about Jay Clayton, and, I've known Jay for a long time. I've always got along with him. I know Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler was an MIT professor before he took Jay's job. But he had some interesting thoughts about Ripple while he was an MIT professor. He thought it was a security. He thought it's exactly what Jay has said, or what the SEC under Clayton and now Gensler is saying. They met a bunch of times before that lawsuit. They met, I think, a day before the lawsuit. It was under the guise, or allegedly for transition team, because Gensler was on the Biden transition team. But they also met in March. What do you make of these meetings? I mean, are they worrisome for you?
I mean, they're not worrisome. I mean, so first of all, one of the things you said, which I think is accurate, but also part of the confusion is Gensler's on video in 2018 also saying he thought XRP wasn't a security.
Oh, so interesting.
And one of the beautiful things about what's happening in the Twitterverse is people are finding these clips that are actually contradictions to what they might have said, and it gets to the heart of the lack of clarity.
He just gave us a shout out on Twitter, I think.
If the now chair of the SEC in 2018 was saying two different things, how can we, Ripple, how can I individually know what the SEC might think in the future? So, look, I believe very strongly that we will get to a good place here. I think it's clear that on Capitol Hill, they're paying more attention to this, frankly, partly because of your reporting. And I think that also is good for the whole industry. If we get into...
That's a good thing. Capitol Hill's now paying attention, which is why I did a tweet this morning.
Gensler has also called out, hey, we need more clarity by saying that we need legislation, but he's saying it's clear there's a contradiction there. I think it looks like Capitol Hill is kind of leaning in a little bit now, which is, I think, a very
really? So
positive.
you think there's going to be some movement to maybe set an Uber regulator as opposed to this sort of...
Okay, that's the first thing that gave me the feeling. Now, I don't know if it's right here, but look, I'll make sure you hear what he says.
Regulation?
Or just to write clarifying laws.
Oh, interesting.
I think you're seeing more senators, more representatives understand that this is a real issue. They're hearing from their constituents this is a real issue. The effort for XRP holders against the SEC now is apparently 45,000 people.
Actually, that would be 50,000 now.
The lawyer told me that. 45
exactly.
and growing.
That is not a small number.
No.
And when those people start calling their representatives, start calling their senators, they pay attention.
You kind of ducked my question, though. Are you a little concerned about those meetings?
Look, optics matter, right? And so do I think some of the optics are a little bit, that's interesting. It's kind of ironic because the SEC obviously, I think in a good way, fights for disclosures. They fight for clarity.
Right.
But then when we ask the SEC to provide disclosures and clarity, you see these things happening. You're like, wait a minute, shouldn't you, what were those meetings? What was the substance and why? And look, what we seek more than anything is clarity and certainty. We think the SEC should play by the same rules around disclosures and clarity.
Right. In other words, these timelines that we're all putting together out here, SEC don't want to talk about those meetings at all.
That we try to.
Bill Hinman gave that famous speech where he declared Ethereum a cryptocurrency, no SEC involvement, Bitcoin obviously. I found out later on that Jay did have some input pre-publication.
And they tried to hide it.
That.
Well, I think one of the things the SEC has said is that was Bill Hinman's personal opinion.
Right.
It's hard to feel like there's a lot of activity that suggests that's much more than one person's individual opinion.
Right.
When the SEC comes out and they post a speech on their website, when they reference it in other things, it feels like that's more than that.
All right.
Brad knows.
Speaking about optics, Bitcoin ETF. I just got off the phone with Mike Novogratz, crypto investor. I believe he's an investor in Ripple too, isn't he?
He is a shareholder. He's a shareholder of Ripple, which is Ripple shares. Those are securities.
Okay.
And they are registered.
Okay.
Or they're under an exemption.
I read that somewhere. That's good to clarify. I asked him about this, and he said it's symbolically, the fact that there is an ETF of Bitcoin, symbolically significant, huge. He used some superlative word. He was a little more dubious about the practical impact because it's a futures contract. Are you on board with that?
Well, first of all, Mike has been one of the most kind of prescient crypto investors out there. And I think generally when he says stuff, I agree with him. In this case, I also agree. It's a baby step.
Took the high road there, Brad.
It's unfortunate that all we can really expect from the SEC right now are baby steps. So I think it's a positive step, but I agree with him in the construct that it's actually a futures ETF as opposed to actually a pure Bitcoin ETF. It really is going to appeal, I think, to very sophisticated investors. to the extent we want to open up the industry, democratize the industry, allow access to the industry, I think it's symbolic, or I think that was a word Mike used.
And the downside to retail getting involved in futures, it's priced differently. It's not. It's a little more of an opaque market, correct?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you start getting into the weeds of how futures work, you're alienating a segment of the market that might not, be familiar with how futures work.
Okay. Before I let you go,
yeah,
will there be an XRP ETF?
Well, look, I think this gets to, it's a really important question, maybe less
XRP ETF, I like it.
Exact answer, which I promise not to dodge. But why is the SEC picking winners and losers?
Yeah.
Why is a government entity deciding this
I'm
is a
going to tell you
winning
why in
one,
a minute.
which, by the way, happens to be have, some pros and cons. Massive power consumption, which isn't great for a climate agenda that Gary Gensler cares a lot about. But being silent about other things. And then, and one of the challenges right now is Gary Gensler, who's been asked specifically about ETH, hasn't commented.
The ethereum.
But if it's so clear, if the laws are so clear and he's asked a specific question, then just answer the question because it's clear.
Well, what's interesting
Exactly.
is I have this debate with people all the time. They're like, well, the internet is regulated. I said, no, it's not. The internet is not really regulated. You can't post illegal stuff. You can't post kiddie porn. You can post it, but you'll get arrested after you post it. That's where I think, would you agree with this notion that the regulation of not just the cryptos, but it all comes down to your technology on Ripple, it has a stifling, it could have a stifling effect?
Well, I think it's already had a stifling effect.
Right.
I mean, here in the United States, it has frozen certainly Ripple's activity in the United States. I think, you saw XRP get delisted from most exchange or halted trading of most U.S. exchanges. So I think it has had a stifling effect here in the U.S. Hopefully when we get to the end of this, there'll be certainty and clarity. And frankly, it could be a very positive thing for the XRP ecosystem and community that it's the one crypto where there is clarity and it is certain.
Do you see a settlement of your case in the works?
Look, I would love to spend less time on this and be able to move forward. The one thing that Ripple cares about more than anything, and really for the whole XRP ecosystem, is that there's clarity going forward that XRP is not a security. If that's not in the cards in a settlement, then there's nothing to settle.
Okay, that last minute, and when he said this may end with clarity for XRP when there is none for others, that's what caught my attention. And I just walk away from that interview thinking, Then I just happened to see this yesterday. Finish this sentence. Is in 5 years, XRP will be, and they've got eyeballs. Uphold may have gotten a good feeling too. Now, I tried my best to watch part of this last night. Gary Gensler had said our old friend, the official favorite SEC commissioner of the Digital Asset Investor channel, Robert Jackson, was on. I can't imagine why Gary Gensler thought it wasn't a good idea to be in a Zoom call with this guy, but he did. And I watched a little bit of it, and I laughed a little bit because Robert Jackson is so animated. He makes me laugh big time. I should have put in this video some of the old classics that we've played from Robert Jackson. I want to get a Robert Jackson, like a picture of Robert Jackson, put it on a T-shirt, and just have Digital Asset Investor channel on it or something. I love Robert Jackson. He's a trip. Okay. Crypto Law. This is John Deaton's law firm. John sent a letter to Judge Torres requesting that the court consider XRP holders' perspective on the SEC's request to extend the expert discovery. So the SEC is trying to drag this case out, and John Deaton saying, "Wait a minute, respectfully, Judge, hear how this hurts us," and he sent him a letter. Now, Rob Licker, I think, hit it out of the park here. This guy says, the SEC Ripple court case is an absolute scam. I'm no longer interested in what happens in the case anymore. Digital Asset Investor and John Deaton have highlighted more than enough corruption. For the sake of the U.S. reputation, Congress needs to step in. And then Rob Licker gives a quote from John Deaton. When the appearance of impropriety rises to the level that it destroys the public's faith in government, actual impropriety has occurred. John Deaton. Now this tweet right here, and I like this, his judgment cometh, and that right soon. I think that's from, I want to say that's what the warden had on the wall in the Shawshank Redemption, one of my favorite movies. Okay, and we know how that ended. Now, so this inspired me to write this tweet this morning. And I think that this tweet, look, you've got to understand before I show you this tweet that I have literally watched hundreds of hours of video on this topic. Okay? So when I read this to you, this is after hundreds of hours of video about this whole Ethereum free pass, and maybe not thousands, but hundreds of hours. And I said, words mean things, and I can tell you the words decentralized protocols and Web 3.0 have everything to do with the Ethereum free pass. These words are also being used as a Trojan horse for what's actually a monopoly, or the creation of a monopoly. The goal was to, this is not even my words, it was one of those lawyers' words. The goal was to get, what they did is they went and had these meetings, and this is my observation. And they created these memos and all these things. And the goal was to come up with a way to get Bitcoin and Ethereum out from under securities laws. Bitcoin would then be a store of value, because that's all it could be, while all future digital assets would be issued on Ethereum, or they would be considered securities, and either the SEC would go after them, or they would have to only list on wherever the SEC and Wall Street wants them to list, okay? Creating a piggy bank, but while all other future assets would be issued on Ethereum, which would create a piggy bank or a token factory for those behind it. The people behind it even are even pointing at Facebook, Amazon, Google as examples of the bad guys while they do it. In other words, those are centralized, and those are these bad monopolies, but we're going to be different because this is the decentralized web. Well, Ethereum never was decentralized, folks. How could it be? Ethereum 2.0 is not even out yet. Okay, that's the fact, Jack. Okay, and that's what makes this so nefarious, in my opinion. Congress needs to be focused on antitrust laws here and haul these clowns in, put that timeline in front of their face and make them answer questions. What were you talking about in these meetings? What was going on in these meetings? Why is only Ethereum being a commodity? Why is that what came out of these meetings and nothing else? And then I said down here, this is un-American. We need a level playing field. Retweet to Congress, and I copied in these senators. This, to me, is the ultimate pressure that needs to be put on Congress and on the people that are behind this, whoever they may be. And I'm not saying that anybody in particular are those people. I'm just saying we have the timeline and we know who were at the meetings, or at least we know some of the gaps. And Gary Gensler was involved in some of that too, by the way. Jay Clayton, all these people, we know that some of them were there at those meetings. This needs to be investigated. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that this is about the creation or the attempt at a creation of a monopoly, and Congress needs to be made aware of it. Thanks for listening.